Good morning, baseball fans, and welcome back to Dan's Vintage Baseball PC. Do not be fooled by that very fancy name. It's just me and some friends talking about baseball cards. And it has been a great year, 2024, for Dan's Vintage Baseball PC. I just wanted to say, and I don't talk about this often, but I am very, very close to 1,000 subscribers. I'm at 932 right now. And I was hoping that if anybody is watching this and you're not subscribed, just click the subscribe button. It's the first time I've ever said that on this channel after a year and a half. And or get your friends to. I have under 1,000, barely under 1,000, but Greg came in, did an interview, and that's got 1,200 views. So there are people viewing the channel who aren't subscribed. So let's get me up to 1,000 by the end of the year is my goal. But anyway, back to the actual channel. And so this is our last guest of the year. And we've been working on this since the National, when he and I met just by chance. And I'll show you a picture of that in a second. Paul has become known as the hobby lawyer, and for good reason. I know from his Twitter feed that he's gone through, lawsuits as they're going on, and educates people and gives everybody information about what's happening. And he's sort of like this incredible public service that for anybody in the hobby, it's cool. But for me, who I'm also a lawyer, I don't know if you knew that, but it's really cool. And then I saw Paul on Jeremy Lee's show, and just thought he was just a great personality. So I was so happy to meet him and talk about, just some hobby card stuff, litigation. So two lawyers talking about lawsuits should be fun, right? But no, we're going to make it fun. Anyway, so let me bring him on now. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Thanks for having me on, Dan. That was a nice intro. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, it's not, I guess you sort of have a unique sort of goal or role in the hobby to educate people on the lawsuits, which are important because there's a ton of them, and there's a big history of them too, which we're going to go through. But I just wanted to show people you and I back in July.
Yep.
Hanging out at the National, which was fun.
And Cleveland.
And that jersey, the jersey has signatures. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so I started it 2 years ago, and I'm going to keep doing it. But I go to the National, and really, I'm there. I'm not there to buy cards or do anything. I'm there to meet and talk to people. So I thought the best souvenir I could get is to have everybody that I meet and talk to sign a jersey for me. So I have 2 of these jerseys. I got lucky to meet a lot of just awesome people in the hobby. I mean, it's such a warm and welcoming hobby, and everyone's just so nice in it. But it's my favorite souvenir that I have. And, I know we're still, 6 or 7 months away from next National, but I'm already looking for my next jersey for next year.
Well, I had the pleasure and the honor of being able to sign on, I think it was either your right or left shoulder.
Yeah. Next year, get the number. Next year, you got to get the numbers.
And so next year in Chicago, I will be at the National. I already have a hotel and everything, but if we run into each other, and I'll make sure we do, I'll sign your new jersey too if you'll have me.
Perfect. I appreciate it. Thank you.
So what I wanted to do was just, whoops, that's not supposed to happen. There we go. Wanted to just give us a little background of your sort of hobby, collecting history, all that kind of stuff, and so we can bring you up to where you are now.
Sure. So I originally started collecting in '86. I was in the suburbs of Chicago. It was a good year to be in Chicago. I mean, the Bulls, the Bears had just, won a Super Bowl the prior year. I mean, it was really a fun year. So, of course, I ended up collecting mostly Garbage Pail Kids and the New York Mets from Topps '86 set. So I completely missed out on Jordan Fleer. I didn't get my first Jordan Fleer until this year. But that's when I originally got in to collecting. I really started, getting back into it again around 2008, right after I had my kids, because I wanted to get them, one of those things to get them a full, complete set of Topps from the year that they were born, just as, some type of souvenir. And I had noticed how much the hobby had changed, because I didn't know there were autograph cards. I didn't know that there were memorabilia cards. So I really jumped in, and I hate to say it, but all the things I bought for my kids for memorabilia, I ended up opening up for myself. So we'll have to go back and try to pick something for that. But really quickly, at the time, I was running an intellectual property group for a plaintiff's firm. And when I looked over the cards, I mean, I saw the, R with the circles, the TMs, the copyright notices. And I realized there is so much IP on cards. And law firms want you to go out and beat the bushes and engage in client development. And one thing you can do is write articles that are
Yeah.
out there. So I decided, it's going to be fun if I write about trading cards, about the legal issues with trading cards. And it just took off from there. And that's what helped me focus my collection, because I think there's like a evolution of how people collect. First, you go in, you try to find the prospects that are going to hit big and you're going to be rich. Then you waste all your money because you never get those. And then you finally figure out that, what makes collecting more fun is to have a theme. And so the theme that I have for my collection is cards that are involved in lawsuits or cards that have legal issues. And since I've started to do that, I enjoy collecting so much more.
Well, I had followed you on Twitter for a while, but I hadn't really gotten that part of it until I saw you on Jeremy Lee's show. And then I was like, oh man, that is the coolest thing. Like, as a lawyer, I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And so, I did a little bit of research just because, it's interesting to me and I understand the concepts, and then realized that there's a whole sort of, long history of litigation in the hobby
industry.
And Topps particularly has, and we'll get into it, but Topps particularly has had, decades of lawsuits.
Yeah, over 70 years.
So one of the things that I do remember you bringing up was Johnny Mize. Yeah. And I'm a Johnny Mize collector. I have a whole thing. One of my earliest shows was on Johnny Mize. Great player, played for a bunch of different teams, but in the hobby lawsuits world, he's famous as sort of the first guy to really start taking on. I guess it's really the first hobby lawsuit, right? So we put together some cards here, and you realize that you collected these 1941 double plays. Johnny Mize has 2 cards in the set. So what happened between Johnny Mize and double play? Why don't you let him?
Yeah, so this is pre-Topps. Topps didn't come around for about a decade after this, but this is, as far as we know, the first lawsuit that involves trading cards. Recently, we've seen some things that there may have been some court orders or some custom orders that may involve trading cards, but this is the first lawsuit that we do definitively know involve trading cards. And it's kind of, it's along the line of the birth of the right of publicity, which is, right now, everybody is really familiar with that because, you're hearing about it with collegiate athletes with the name, image, likeness lawsuits. And this is really the precursor for that. So Johnny Mize was in this double play set, and Johnny Mize was a phenomenal player at the time. And he didn't give double play permission to use his image in there. So he decided, I'm going to bring a lawsuit over this. Ultimately, he was not successful in the lawsuit. The right of publicity had a few bumps into being fully recognized. And unfortunately for Johnny Mize, he didn't win this one. But I think, as you pointed out, though, the lawsuit probably cost Gum Inc., the company that made double play, quite a bit of money because this seems to be, they didn't seem to make any more sets after this one. So whether that's a success, whether that's due to Johnny Mize or whatever it was, it's it's lawsuits just old. You try to put it together from what you can see, and some of it's a little bit of hearsay. There's some orders here and there, but it looks like on paper it may not have been a win for him, but in reality it may have been a win for him, and it started the whole right of publicity.
Yeah, and so I my research into this was similar. He lost the case, but did he cost them so much in legal fees that they decided it wasn't even worth it to do another set, or was it World War II? We're talking about 41 into 42. Hard to say, but they never did another set like this. So I actually do have Johnny Mize in my collection. I have another card which is kind of funny. It's Nelson Potter, who was on the 48 Braves. That's the reason I have the card. But the guy next to him, Benny McCoy, was part of one of the first group of free agents in the game, because Kennesaw Mountain Landis didn't like the way the Tigers are treating their minor leaguers. They weren't giving them a chance in the major leagues, so he made a bunch of them free agents. So Buddy McCoy ended up on the A's as a result. But that's a whole different set of issues. So next lawsuit. Sorry about the coughing, folks. I've been sick for about a week, so just getting better. So these are 3 cards from the 1948-49 that we now know to be 49 Leaf set. There's my Spawn. Johnny Mize pops up again, and Bob Elliott from the 48 Braves, and Spawn from the 48 Braves. This set spurned a lawsuit that you've collected this particular gentleman because of. Let's talk about Leaf and how they got involved in courts.
Sure, and my cards are nowhere near as good as yours. This is one of those ones where I, so what we have here is we have Buddy Rosar. We have both his Bowman and his Leaf card, and this lawsuit in '48, Bowman went and probably started the way that the hobby currently is, and went and got actual contracts with the players so that they could use their images, but not only contracts, exclusive licenses with them. To make sure that they locked up as many players as they could. So 48 is when Bowman started to do this, and Bowman's set is the black and white set there on the right. And 49, though, Leaf wants to compete with them. So they come out with arguably a better looking set. It's color. It's actually got the name of the player on there. But they did not get licenses from the players. So Bowman and a number of players, including Buddy Rosar here, brought a lawsuit against them further over the right of publicity. And this is a lawsuit that went on for quite a while and bounced around in a couple courts. But it's what it's really known for, at least known for me, is not only does it help establish a right of publicity, but it also establishes an assignability of the right of publicity, meaning that a player doesn't have to just sue in their name, but the manufacturer, if they have the exclusive right with the player, can actually bring the lawsuit on behalf of them. So it's one of those little baby steps along the way to current. And we have another lawsuit where we'll talk about later on. That's a modern lawsuit where you actually have a modern manufacturer using a player's right of publicity.
So I pulled out my Buddy Rosar too. So
a great card. It's just the images nice back then, and that's what I like to do. I like to do the comparison of both cards that are involved in the lawsuits, and I thought this one was pretty good because you have a very similar image of Buddy in both of the cards. So it's just and that's what I find neat to me, because at heart I am a litigator, and I always like to do the side by side comparisons of my client, the good guy, who is always the good guy, versus the bad guy stuff, and that's kind of like how I like to have my collection there.
Well, they both got pretty good catcher cards, and some of those 48 Bowman cards are good. Some of them are not so good, but Leaf is, like as you said, a better set, generally speaking. So Leaf, what I read was that Leaf, in part of the lawsuit, and I think they were kind of making fun of Bowman, but they were also saying it distinguishes them from Bowman, was that they didn't have the names on the front of the cards. Yep. So Bowman took that to heart, and in 1949.
Yeah, it's at this point it's hard to tell a difference. I mean, you almost want to see a trademark infringement or some type of trade dress infringement lawsuit by Leaf against Bowman, because you're like, hey, look, you copied our card design.
Yeah. So, but they didn't start the process with so now there are 49 Bowman. There are name on front, no name on front cards.
Yeah.
So Johnny Mize, speaking of, has 2 different cards in the set, the one with the name, one with the not name, because Bowman didn't get their act together early enough. But so they ended up, I guess, winning, because Leaf didn't make another set until 1960, I think.
Yeah, no, I think it was a good success for them, and it helped set up the next the Topps lawsuit where that comes in now.
Right. So we're showing here the 1951. I guess it was Jerry Coleman. Was Coleman a litigant in that case, or are you just showing this particular card as a?
I don't remember. I bought this card so long ago. I tried to buy litigants, but it may have been one of those that initially, when I find out about a lawsuit, I panic and buy the first card that I can get, and then I later decide I'm going to go back and get a better one. I think here he was one of the named litigants in it, but I really have to up my game for these older lawsuits. I mean, especially after seeing all your beautiful SGC cards, and mine are like, still like they look like they were dropped in a muddy puddle.
Oh, stop. I've been going back and forth with one of my other hobby friends about, graded cards versus non-graded cards. And, there's a lot to be said for cards out in the raw, in the natural. That being said, so 51 starts the beginning of the lawsuits, or may have been just one lawsuit that just goes on and on and on between Topps and Bowman for like the whole first half of the 1950s.
Yeah, and this is a wide-ranging lawsuit where Topps decided to come in, and they ended up signing contracts with players, but their contracts were basically saying, as soon as Bowman's contract with you ends, our contracts begin. And so this is where it's kind of a battle of exclusives. Your exclusive ends, I want my exclusive to begin. And there was just a lot of litigation over this, and probably the big takeaway for the litigation, although we can get mired in the procedure and we'd be interested in what happened for the procedure, the ultimate outcome here is that Topps ended up buying Bowman, or at least buying from Halayan Labs. I can never pronounce that right. I think it's the gum manufacturer, the confectionery manufacturing, and the cards. So if you're wondering why Topps has a Bowman set or how they got the Bowman set, this is the lawsuit that enabled that.
Yeah, and I guess it was sort of, they won by attrition because they went back and forth, 51 and 50. It's funny because 52 Topps came out while there was pending litigation where Bowman was trying to stop them from doing it. And they ended up putting out, arguably one of the most famous sets, not one of, but arguably the most famous set in the vintage hobby, the 52 Topps set. And then, Bowman put out a 52 set, which was kind of, I like it, I collect it, but, and then they decided in 53 to kind of, go back against Topps and produce that beautiful 53 Bowman color set, which, practically bankrupted them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, there's multiple ways you can win a lawsuit. You can either win on the legal issues, or you can make the other side go broke. And I think here you had, I think this lawsuit spurned innovation. It really did. Both companies were really trying to one up the other, not just in the courtroom, but actually for trading cards. And the winners were the collectors.
I agree. That's the golden age. They literally call it the golden age.
Yeah.
The,
because of lawyers. Thank you.
Yes, it's all the lawyers, you hobbyists. Thank the lawyers.
The unheralded heroes of the hobby.
So this one, I have the whole set. It's a weird thing. It's the 1951 Burk Ross set. There are 40 cards of baseball players, so I collected all 40 of them. They were issued as, in 51, a panel with 2 players on it. And I've seen John Mangini show off the box, and the box has like little windows where the cards were. And then I guess you collected the card and cut it in half, or didn't. So I have some that are like together, like the Rizzuto and let me go to this beautiful card of Al Rosen and Phil Rizzuto,
nice.
Which both players I like to collect on one card, and it's a 5, which is nice. But then single cards, and the reason I got into this set was because of this card. It's so hard to buy DiMaggio that if you can get a DiMaggio Playing Days card for like under a certain dollar amount, you go grab it. So DiMaggio was the first card that I got in this set, which, as we said, was kind of a bootleg set, and they didn't have anyone's permission. So they got sued by players and by Topps.
Now this is, and thank you for actually turning me onto this set, because this is, one of those things, because again, nowadays, every lawsuit that happens, we know about it. It pops up, either the media is covering it, or we're members of like web services that provide you all the lawsuits, and you can go back and find all the opinions. When you're getting into lawsuits in the 40s and the 50s, it's hard to find, much information on there. So I'm glad that you told me about this set, because now I got to go back and add some to my collection.
Yeah, no, they're not great cards, but I think they speak to the era.
Yeah.
And some of the photos that they use are great. So that's this first set. Second set is 10 cards. There's DiMaggio in the middle. Third set's another 10 cards, and it's mostly because it's 51. They took Yankees and Phillies because they played in the 50 series. And there's a few other like Stan Musial's in here, Lawrence Spahn, and Ralph Kiner. There's the fourth set, and on the bottom right is Sam Jethro, who I also collect, and the upper right is Whitey Ford, who that's a rookie card.
Oh wow!
Because 51. He had the 51 Bowman and the 51 Burk Ross. Burk Ross is far less expensive.
Yeah.
So this is your beautiful George Brett rookie card. So why are we looking at this?
Yeah. So this one, there wasn't that I know of any lawsuits in 1975, but this is where we start branching into like more modern issues that really, with my IP background, that I want to focus on. It's what protection do manufacturers get for card designs? Because obviously everyone's familiar with the 1975 top set. Well, in 2011, I think it was, Upper Deck decided to make inserts. And their inserts, they're the middle card, the Carlos Beltran in the middle, decided to make these inserts that look remarkably like the 1975 tops. Yep. So that ended up getting them sued. And the lawsuit settled, as most lawsuits do. And you've never seen another major manufacturer making any other 1975 tops card sets. So this lawsuit, while there wasn't any orders out there, it seems to stand for the premise, or at least the manufacturers are respecting, that if a manufacturer has a significant card design, something that's not simple, but it's something that's recognizable, that it's subject to copyright protections, or maybe trademark protections. And because of that, there is this kind of wall that they're not going to allow others to use their IP for these. I really wanted to see this lawsuit go forward, because copyright protection really only covers like an actual image itself. Using it to actually cover a card design is kind of revolutionary. That's something more for like patents would actually cover. So the hobby, with their lawyers, is maybe not accidentally, but they've actually made copyright more powerful than it used to be. And it's an interesting thing for me to follow, being an IP attorney. And also, my favorite lawsuits are copyright lawsuits. I love bringing copyright lawsuits on the behalf of a plaintiff, because they're the easiest lawsuits if you have a good lawsuit to win. And there's not very many defenses to it. It has an organized bar. There's an organized plaintiff's copyright bar. Thank you, Walt Disney and everybody else. But there's not really an organized defense bar. I think with the computer age coming out, there is some more underground, grassroots organizations that are trying to protect copyright defendants in cases, but it's really not as powerful as all the Fortune 500 companies that are on the plaintiff side.
Yeah, because they've got people who are making a lot of money, and they want to protect that, as opposed to the other side, which is sort of a haphazard kind of group of people who are the copyright violators.
Yeah, and mostly, and I don't know if you've, I've been lucky enough to talk to a lot of like photographer groups or writers groups or other artists. And invariably, when you talk to these groups, about 10, 15 minutes into it, the whole conversation breaks down into them asking questions about how much of other people's stuff can I steal before it's copyright infringement. And that's, why I think the plaintiffs are so organized, because there's so much theft that there is. But I also wanted, I put these cards here because on the left, you actually have a tops issue of the 1975 set afterwards. So it's kind of like what happened here is Upper Deck saw the IP, they tried to use it, they got caught. And then Tops said, you know what? I like our old IP. Let's start reusing that a little bit more often.
Well, they've been exploiting that now for years with their heritage sets.
Yep.
So it's like, 71 and 72 and they just go on. And then they do like the reissues of 53 and 52. And Tops has really kind of gone over the top, so to speak, with
the tops.
Stealing their own vintage sets, which, as a vintage collector kind of bugs me a little bit, but in a way it's kind of like, oh, cool. Like some kid is going to open this and say, what is that? Like, that's a cool design. Maybe I should get some of the original cards. And so maybe it's a gateway into collecting vintage. But here's another one. I brought this up because I was like, does this, and you'll get into it in a second, but this is the 1961 Tops design.
Yeah.
So
But
I
it
want
was a 2000, I think it was 2010's top set. It's
right,
a top set, and this, this part of the set was showing like famous feats that occurred. And one of the ones that they covered is obviously, walking on the moon. And so the image is, I mean, you could totally tell it's Buzz Aldrin,
right,
but it's an image of Buzz Aldrin on the moon, and it also on the back of the card says that it's Buzz Aldrin. Well, using the right of publicity, which was, helped really get established in the trading cards in, the 50s, litigation in the 40s and the 50s, Buzz Aldrin sued Topps saying, hey, I didn't give you permission to use my name on cards, my name, my image, my likeness on cards. And this lawsuit went on for a while, but Topps ended up winning this because the court said, you know what, there's going to be some limits to the right of publicity. And one of those limits is famous events. We
yeah,
can't let people who are involved in famous events own those famous events. So at that instance, the freedom of speech, the First Amendment at that point takes over. And so it's one of the lawsuits where the right of publicity was growing and growing in power. And this is one of the limits that was placed onto it. You can't,
yeah.
you can't own an event.
Well, it's interesting because going all the way back to Johnny Mize, that was Gumming's defense. Was basically it's almost like a public figure kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
we think you're important enough to put out. I guess I don't know where the line would be drawn legally between Buzz Aldrin in 2008 and Johnny Mize in 1941. Like who's like historically or at least publicly enough of an important figure to have a photograph of them be something that you can do, and who's not. That's
Yeah, and that's that slippery slope that all attorneys like because it gives both sides the ability to argue for it. Because really, if you think about it, if you have a picture of a double play in game 132 of the 2008 series, 2008 season, it's not the most important game that there was, but it's still history. It really is. So is that worth an event that you can use that image or not? And that's why, I think courts leave a little bit of that leeway there so that they can get the parties in front of them and decide, okay, who's actually the good guy here? Who's actually the bad guy? Yeah, I think famous events, ultra famous events, you're not going to get a right of publicity to trump that. How far down that goes, I'm sure it'll be litigated again at some point.
Yep, because Topps has never stopped litigating.
Yeah.
So, not litigation per se, but legally speaking, in the mid 60s, I guess it was 66, the Major League Baseball Players Association hired Marvin Miller to be their attorney. And he started to realize that Topps was taking advantage of the Players Association. And they were giving them $5 here and $100 total. And so he decided that he was going to say to the players, and, it was kind of one of their first union actions as a whole, was to say, screw you, Topps, give us more money, treat us with more respect, or we're not even going to let you take our photographs. So for 2 years, 67 and 68, Topps had very, very few photographs. So they end up reusing. This is the 66 Willie Mays picture, which has been cropped to be onto his 69 card. Exact same picture. One of the top players in the game doesn't get a new picture every year because of Topps and the Players Association having a little bit of a gripe. Same thing with Hank Aaron. They didn't even bother cropping this one. So his 68 and 69 card is literally the exact same photo, which, is the loser in this is us, the collectors, because you want a new picture of Hank Aaron. And then Tom Seaver, 68 and 69, exact same photo, except, they don't have the rookie cup in the 69. So I brought that up because I felt like, it's kind of important. They ended up settling with Topps in 1970 as a whole new set of photographs. But, it's sort of like the union flexed their muscles a little bit. Marvin Miller came in, and he's a man who changed baseball in many different ways. But legally speaking, they held Topps over a barrel, and they won. So
yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned the whole fact that who really lost out here was the the collectors, because you're still seeing that today with exclusive licenses. Right now with Victor Wembanyama, the exclusive license for his autographs is with Fanatics. meaning that although there is quite a few autograph cards for him out there, none of them are officially licensed by the NBA. He's not actually in a uniform with logos or anything on there too. So while those sets seem to be doing well, and I don't think Fanatics is hurting for money with those sales, it's one of those things that, while there's these legal issues and everyone has to abide by them, sometimes it does overlook the consumer, who kind of gets a little bit steamrolled in cases like these, while the companies and the leagues and the players try to figure out, how can I maximize revenue for me?
Yeah, exactly. And we end up having the same Tom Seaver cards. So speaking of Tom Seaver, who I do collect, which is why I have those cards, this is one of my favorite parts of the hobby lawsuit story, which is little Samson and Delilah, not Samson and Delilah. What's it? Who's Samson? Who did Samson? Oh, David and Goliath. That's something. David
there you
go. Whatever. David and Goliath thing is like, the David is SSPC, who Mike Aronstein was part of that, and Keith Olbermann was part of it, and Renata Galasso and her husband were part of it, and it's like the sort of collectors put together a little bit of a fight back against them, and they put out this set, SSPC set, which is model in the 53 Bowman, these beautiful color pictures, but nothing else on the front, and then a biography in the back, which was written by Keith Olbermann. And Topps was like, nah. So Topps sent them a bunch of threatening letters, and I don't think there was ever actually a lawsuit, but they went back and forth with the lawyers. And SSPC, these guys are smart. They figured out, I don't know how they figured it out, but they beat Topps like in 3 different ways in this. They were able to issue everything that they had sold via mail order up until a certain date. And that certain date was February something. So it was everybody who had bought it at that point had the sets. SSPC made enough money to actually make money on the set, which is ironic because most of these companies lost money in their first years. And then now they have these fantastic set from 76 with these great photographs. So it all came about as a result of this magazine. I'll show you a little picture of it. It's Collectors Quarterly. The editor-in-chief of Collectors Quarterly was Keith Olbermann. He's got a little editorial here. William Aronstein, but here's the funny. There's a picture of Keith Olbermann.
Is he like 19?
He is. I think he's either a freshman or a sophomore at Cornell University.
That's
so he literally
awesome.
puts his address in here. Before December 15th, mailed to 14 Menon Hall, Cornell University. After December 15th, mailed to Fenwick Road in Hastings-on-Hudson, which was literally his parents' house. So much
He's leaving the dorms.
And here's Michael Aronstein himself, also, if you can see it, wrote a piece in here. So, and then the centerpiece of it, which I was just showing in the slideshow, is a bunch of cards. And then after the cards is your opportunity to mail in and buy cards. So that's how SSP started this whole thing. And the set itself is huge. It's like 500 and something cards. These were the ones that were in the magazine. You just clip them out and have your own new baseball cards. So I actually had this magazine as a kid. I rebought this like a few years ago. But I actually had this magazine as a kid and cut these out. Like I was, wow, it's my own baseball cards. So that was cool. So SSPC, not only did they make money because they negotiated a time frame on it, they also ended up producing these sets, and they got out of Topps a permission to put a new set of cards into the yearbooks of the Mets and the Phillies. So very few people know about this, but there's a 1978 SSP. These are all hand cut. They were never released as single cards. So I got these recently. In fact, I don't even have them in hand. They were graded by rather difficult grades by SGC here. 1978 Yankees put these in the yearbook. They were, it was like an insert and you cut them out. And the person who cut these out did a really nice job, except they're a little off center. So they gave me a little bit of a tough time with the grade. But so at 78 SSPC. So Michael Arenstein's son, Andy, works for Love the Game Auctions. And I've talked to Andy a bunch of times. Tried to get Michael on the show, but he's 90 years old and he's had a few health problems and he lives in Arizona, but he's still around, still kicking it. And hopefully someday I can get him on the show. But at this point, I'm just happy to have the cards that he created in the hobby, historical figures for not only great cards, but also beating tops at their own game.
Yeah, and it's just that story about being able to sell off your inventory. That is such a huge
yes.
for a lawyer, because normally you're like, I want to see your stuff destroyed or sent to me or destroyed. So the fact that they let them go through with those sales is just a good victory for their lawyers.
Yeah. No, I'd like to know who their lawyers were, because they really they forced concessions that basically won it for them. They didn't produce another set. But what Michael Arenstein did, and where he made all of his money after that, was he produced minor league sets and special sets and, old timers. And, there's a whole TCMA is the company, did this for years. And the minor league sets actually are pretty cool as you get into the 80s. So I don't know what this is. So you're going to have to explain this to me, Paul.
Sure. This is a little far afield from what we're doing, but it's to show you the love of collecting. It's sometimes it's the actual chase more than anything else. So one of the first lawsuits that I covered involved Upper Deck. Upper Deck, it was Konami versus Upper Deck, where Konami came out with this game called Yu-Gi-Oh! And these are Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards. Upper Deck was the exclusive licensee to distribute Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards in the U.S. and internationally as well. And so these cards were really selling well, but Upper Deck found out that there were certain cards that sold better than others, certain rare cards that they could make a lot of money on. So Upper Deck started counterfeiting its own cards and selling these. And normally I say allegedly, but here I don't have to, because there was a trial over this, and the court found, and their lawyer and Upper Deck lawyers admitted that these cards were counterfeited. So as part of my collection, what I like to do is I like to display, like I said, the original and then the infringing cards. Or the counterfeit cards that were here. So on the top row are the actual original cards. They're first edition, and they have these gold stickers in the bottom right-hand corner that you can see. Well, the way that you can tell the counterfeit cards is because in the bottom right-hand corner of the bottom row, you can see the stickers are silver. So it's slightly different color from gold to silver. And it took me 10 years to collect all the counterfeit cards. I would find them on eBay, and the pictures on eBay are never any good. So I'd always have to, send a message to the seller and say, hey, what color is that sticker in the bottom right? Is it gold or is it silver? And invariably, they always said it was silver. And then I would buy it, have it sent to my house, open it up, and it was always gold. It was always the wrong ones. So it took me 10 years to finally complete the set. So there were 9 cards. There were 9 cards that were knocked off, and I finally got them all.
So 9 cards took you 10 years. All right. Well,
yeah.
I don't feel so bad about taking so long on my 1972 set with high numbers.
No. Yeah. But it's the chase, because really once I was done with this and I displayed with it, I was kind of sad because I did spend so much time trying to put that set together.
So Upper Deck is a Canadian company. Am I right about that?
I don't think so. I think they're U.S. I mean, I could be wrong. I think they're out of L.A. or California. Oh,
they're out of L.A. Okay. So who am I thinking of? I don't know.
OPG?
What?
OPG?
Well, OPG, yeah, of course. But there was another Canadian company that does a lot of. Was it Upper Deck? I forget. Oh well.
Was it In the Game?
Yeah. When they produced these, distributed them internationally, and then basically ripped themselves off.
Yeah. No, they were making a lot of money, and then
who's the litigants in the lawsuit?
Because ultimately there was another lawsuit after Upper Deck settled with Konami. Upper Deck, it was only a settlement on behalf of the U.S. entity of Upper Deck. So then Konami sued the international Upper Deck companies. So then ultimately we had a lawsuit of Upper Deck versus Upper Deck, where it was the European Upper Deck was suing the U.S. Upper Deck because they hung the international Upper Decks out to dry when they settled with Konami. So that was a beautiful, there's a old commercial way back when, where I think Coke, Diet Coke wanted to sue normal Coke. It was a joke commercial that was out there. Well, it actually happened in the hobby. You had Upper Deck suing Upper Deck.
So Konami was the plaintiff essentially,
Correct.
and it was basically that they were sort of diluting their copyright by just.
Oh, it was breach of contract. It was
Okay.
counterfeiting. It was, because they had copyrights on all these. I mean, it was a slew of claims. Yeah. Upper Deck did bad stuff.
Yeah. Well. All right. So this is this is another one of those, I guess, right of publicity, and I guess I'll let you point it out, the difference. Well, other than the sort of color of these two cards, there's one major difference that you have to be able to see.
Yeah, so this is probably the most recent right of publicity case that's out there, and it shows you how powerful it is and how much it's advanced. Because, as probably everyone knows, Upper Deck is the exclusive licensee for Michael Jordan.
Right.
And so Upper Deck will bring right of publicity lawsuits against anybody who they think infringes Michael Jordan's rights, their rights. So here on the left and on the right are two Panini cards. And the sole difference for the image that we care about here is on the right card in the bottom right corner, there's a very 0.125 inch tall Michael Jordan.
There he is.
So Panini got sued over this for the right of publicity. Yep. And this just goes to show you the evolution of the right of publicity, where Johnny Mize brought his lawsuit for right of publicity for using the biggest image of him centered on the card and didn't win. But ultimately, the right of publicity was recognized. The right of publicity was recognized to be assigned to other companies where they could actually bring the lawsuit on behalf of the athletes. And here, in the 2020s, you actually have Upper Deck bringing a right of publicity lawsuit against another trading card manufacturer for a 0.125 inch Michael Jordan in the corner. And like most lawsuits, this lawsuit settled confidentially, so we don't know what happened. But I can tell you, Michael Jordan has not been on another Panini card since then.
So, I mean, it's almost like you'd think he's just a background. He's like the Menendez brothers in the Mark Jackson card,
Exactly. Yep.
He's in the background, but they cropped. I think this is part of it, is that they had originally cropped him out.
Yeah. Upper Deck pointed out, and so these are they're both Panini cards. But if you notice the card on the left, that is lacking Michael Jordan in the background. It was cropped out. So Panini in the complaint argued, and I thought it was a great argument, that hey, they knew they were not supposed to do this. They created this card. Michael Jordan is not in it. He's in the other card. That shows intent right there, that they knew what they were doing. So that's how they were asking for willful infringement and attorney's fees.
I mean, I believe that Panini did this because, like, the hobbyists would be like, oh, look, there's Michael Jordan. I want to get that card. It's like the card, I think it's Michael Jordan is in the background of somebody else's card wearing a different jersey because the Bulls lost their jerseys before a game or something. So he was wearing like number 6 or something. So This is a famous card also. And that's the whole the concept, that he's in the background, but it's kind of a cool thing. All right. So we got, I think we got 2 more slides. I think there's 1 more slide after this. But anyway, so we got Greg Maddux on the left.
Yeah, this is a fun lawsuit, and it kind of shows the evolution of cards here, because this Topps Finest set came out, and in there the gold refractors, which this is one of them, was allegedly limited to 150 cards. So a collector went to try and collect all of the gold refractors, Greg Maddux cards, and this is 1996. Yes, there was an internet, but it was not used for what it's used for now. So it's pretty difficult to go around the country during this time frame collecting every single card that you have for one player. So in his collections, and then there's another collector that did the same thing for Jaromir Jagr, tried to collect all these. Well, each of those collectors collected well more than 150 cards that were the gold refractors. So they brought a lawsuit, and ultimately, they won through a settlement for the lawsuit. But this is one of those, lawsuits that ushered in a change to the card. If you're wondering why there's numbers on cards, this lawsuit is one of the major impetuses for that. Do we know if Topps did that on purpose? We don't. Is it equally likely that it could have been a mistake that was made just because somebody wasn't counting and just kept hitting print? It could have been. Well, this is a way to keep the manufacturers honest and to cut down on errors. If you if you have a numbered card in the set, if you put the numbers actually on there, hopefully you won't print 2 number 2s, or 5 number 3s. But it was a fascinating lawsuit because again, it's a lawsuit that changed the hobby, and I think changed it for the better for consumers.
I agree. So on the right is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Yeah, and this is another right of publicity lawsuit. This is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar bringing a right of publicity lawsuit against Upper Deck for not giving Upper Deck permission to use his name, image, and likeness on collegiate cards that they had as an insert for one of their sets. And the reason I have this in here is because this actually went to trial. There's actually images of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in the courtroom while the trial is going on. Settled confidentially. We don't know what happened. There wasn't a judgment in there. But trials, all lawyers know trials are rare. You don't get very many trials. And this is, one of the trials in the hobby, one of the most recent trials in the hobby. And is, again, because of the right of publicity.
So the card on the top looks like it's got a signature on it. Is that an auto version of it, or was that?
No, it says greats of the game.
Oh, yeah. That's just my bad. Eyesight. And it looks like the one on the bottom right has both Kareem for UCLA and also Bill Walton.
Yep. There were other collegiate athletes that were shown in those, but Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is the only one that brought a right of publicity lawsuit.
Interestingly enough, he when he was playing for UCLA was not known as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He was, of course, known as Lou Alcindor.
Yep.
So.
And I think some of the cards actually say Lou Alcindor instead of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I think that was one of the ways Upper Deck was trying to get around it, saying, "Oh, that's not even his name anymore."
Oh well.
And this is one of my favorite lawsuits too.
So this is recent, right? This is
this is very recent.
Yeah.
So this is a 2022 lawsuit over a 2020 card where Leaf brought a lawsuit against CD Lamb because collectors now complain a lot about redemptions, and it's taking a long time for redemptions. And this is one of those ones where if you're a lawyer, you kind of feel bad for the manufacturers because it's not the trading card company normally that's taking their time producing the card. It's getting the autograph from the athletes. So here the manufacturers are kind of, they're kind of held hostage by what the athletes are doing in their schedules and everything else. Well, Leaf got upset with CD Lamb. It took 2 years. He hadn't signed his cards. So Leaf brought a lawsuit. It's the only instance that we have of a manufacturer suing an athlete over a redemption card to force that breach of contract action, to force them to abide by the contract. Because that's how this whole industry works. Manufacturers have contracts with the client, with the athletes, and the athletes are supposed to sign a certain amount of cards pursuant to those contracts. But manufacturers don't want to sue the athletes because you don't want to, kill the golden goose. If you start suing athletes, they might not ever want to work with you ever again. But here, I have this in here because it's one of the fastest lawsuits, not only in the hobby, but that I've ever seen. Because within a week, this lawsuit was filed, it was settled, there were signed cards sent to Leaf, and Leaf put those signed cards in the mail. So it is one of the most successful lawsuits you will ever see from beginning to end, and it was a complete win by Leaf.
I'll tell you, one of the losers in the set in the lawsuit, though, again, was the collector, because CD Lamb's autograph is kind of a joke here.
Yeah, I know it's basically just 2 circles, but as a lawyer, and that's why this is part of my collection here. I've got the actual redemption and the actual card to show the before and the after again.
That's cool. You actually went ahead and got the redemption.
Yeah.
But you didn't send that redemption in. I don't know. I guess it's too late now. It's 2020.
Oh no, I actually did. So all you had to do is enter the code right there. So if anybody wants to enter the code and try and get my redemption, I've already gotten it. But that was the code I entered to get it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So as you know, I'm a vintage guy. So modern stuff, I probably just said something that's kind of stupid, because you would just, of course, put that in.
Well, I mean, that's one of those fun things, though, because I'm more of a modern collector. So I'm thinking you've taught me so much more about, a couple of legal issues I didn't know about. So I will greatly be supplementing my set for this too. So I'm glad I got to teach you about how redemptions, how they're not supposed to be there, but how they annoyingly work.
So I think that was good. We did 49 minutes. We went through the entire history of litigation in the
Yeah. Well, I think they should take this and find a sports law class somewhere at some law school, and there you guys go. You're welcome.
Yeah. I don't think I get CLE for this though. That's the problem.
It's a bummer.
Credits. So the one thing we didn't talk about, which I did do a little bit of research on, it was Fleer suing Topps over and over and over again, and all the way up until like they got the decision in like 81 or 80 that allowed them to break the monopoly, and open the floodgates to all the new different sets in the 80s. Which I don't know. Should Topps have had a monopoly for essentially 15 years, or actually no, 56, 25 years? No, I don't think so. But for collectors, it ended up kind of being a good thing in a way.
Yeah, and I miss that because starting collecting in '86, there were so many licenses that were out there. I mean, I had Bowman, Fleer, Bowman, I had Donruss, Fleer, Topps. I mean, there was just all in uniform, all the players. I think that was my golden age. I know it's junk wax and they printed it into oblivion, but you had so much design, you had so much competition. I really enjoyed that. So it's interesting now that you have the kind of part two of that lawsuit. You have Panini suing Fanatics for antitrust.
Yep.
Where Panini's alleging that Fanatics basically has too many exclusive licenses,
Yep.
Which is kind of funny because Panini used to be the one that had all the exclusive licenses. And now they're saying that apparently there's a limit. You can only have 3 exclusive licenses, but not 6. It's a weird position. Normally in an antitrust suit, you will have a competitor that will bring it, but they're the bottom low competitor. It's somebody who's trying to get in, not the old, top of the not the former champion bringing it. You normally have a lot smaller person actually bringing it. So
yeah, it's sort of it's come full circle almost from the Bowman versus Topps days, where they were both the top of the chain, kind of fighting each other for supremacy, and now we're back, getting everything condensed into one company. Yeah. But so that's hobby law. So I mean, I did hobby law with the hobby lawyers, so I feel pretty good about that.
What's really funny is just, we've just barely scratched the surface, really, because there is probably 10 to 15 new lawsuits a year that are out there. So I never don't have anything that I could say in the morning on Twitter about what's going on in the hobby.
Well, that's what I was going to say is, you, like I said at the beginning, you provide like an indispensable service for the hobby. And, I will, of course, put your Twitter and your BlueSky and whatever else you want in the description, because I would encourage anyone to follow you, because these are not just lawsuits. They're news. They're how is the hobby going to continue? And, as much as I'm a lawyer and and I think about these things all the time, hobbyists should also, because the law and these lawsuits really affected like what cards we got. What players were on, had different cards, different players. I have a Ted Williams card. He was exclusive to Topps in '54, but Bowman put a card out anyway, and then they pulled it, so it's rare. I mean, these are things that affect the hobby to the point where it's fun as a lawsuit to look at as a lawyer, but it's also fun as a collector to try to figure out why this card is here or why this card is not, or who's in what set or whatever. So.
Yeah. And that's part of why I really like collecting what I collect, because it's not just the name on the card and everything else. These cards that are involved in lawsuits also have that additional business story behind it. Yeah. I think it just makes a collection so much, 4-dimensional instead of 3-dimensional.
And that's having cards that have a story is, to me, what makes them important. I mean, I could have common cards from the 70s that don't mean anything to me, but I have a card with a story over there. To me, that makes the hobby so much more enjoyable and important. And I thank you, sir. It was a pleasure meeting you at the National and signing your shoulder. I hope to do that again in July. And it took us a while. You agreed to do the show that day, but it's we went back and forth, and you're a busy man. And I know you.
Lawyers, unfortunately, you guys might not realize it, but lawyers are busy.
Well, you also, I believe, you started your own firm in that time frame.
Yeah, no, yeah, just launch it in December. So that's another reason why I'm a little bit busier and not at home not at home as much as I used to be. But I have a much better place to display my collection now. So
I will link to your, I guess your law firm has a website, I guess, right?
In the works.
In the works.
I've been slacking on that one a little bit. It's in the works. Just go to my Twitter page.
You're also, besides being a guest that I really, really happy that you came on the show, and also you're the last guest of the year, because next week I'm just going to do a regular show with me, and then it's the end of the year, and then we'll start up in 2025 with some more stuff. But anyway, Paul, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. Viewers, tune in next week. There will be a show next Saturday, and I'm also hosting For Collectors on Sunday night, which I will put a link in my channel for. But keep watching, keep sticking, and get me to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, please. Okay? Anyway, thanks, Paul.
Thanks
Guys,
for having me on.
take care. All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.